Welcome to the Feel Your Best Formula podcast. Are you over 40 and tired of struggling with your weight? Do you feel like you're constantly starting over with your nutrition and fitness? I'm Lil, a certified nutrition coach and former registered nurse, and I too have been there. At the age of 44, I decided I was done with being stuck in the vicious diet cycle. I became a nutrition coach and created the Feel Your Best Formula for women who are ready to do things differently. If you're ready to build a better relationship with food, get your energy back, build muscle, lose fat, and keep it off for good, then you're in the right place. I'm so glad you're here. Now let's build your formula for feeling your best. Okay, hello everyone. Welcome back to the Feel Your Best Formula podcast. I am so excited today because today we have Angela, one of my clients, and she is going to share her experience, some wisdom for you from her perspective. And we're gonna mostly focus on her experience with a fat loss phase, but I think a little bit more than that obviously is gonna come up through the conversation. Hi, Angela. Thank you for being here.
Hi, thanks for having me. This is my first podcast experience, so I feel kind of awkward, but it's good.
I think you're going to be fine. For those of you who don't know Angela, maybe some of your friends will end up listening to this, which will be awesome. But Angela is a Pilates studio owner and instructor. And you're 53, or did you have a birthday?
52 still.
52.
52.
Okay. So going to be 53 at some point. I know, I'm like, I remember it was early
Yeah. No,
50s.
not till May. I
And
have a little bit of time yet.
it's okay. I thought I was actually my birthday's in a few months, and someone asked me how old I was, and I said, I'm 48. I was at the doctor's office, and then she looked at me. She was like, no, you're not. Like, okay, sorry. Then why are you the one asking me? You're the one that knows. I feel like once you get to a certain age, it's just all the same, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So anyway, I already said you're a Pilates studio owner, instructor, and, in that wellness space, helping other women feel good about themselves. You have a very busy lifestyle. And I would love if you could just first share a little bit more about your background with, nutrition, fitness. Obviously that's important to you being someone who has a business in the industry. Can you just kind of tell us a little bit about your background there?
Sure. So, I've been in the wellness fitness space for oh, 4 or 5 years now. And prior to that, I wasn't, but I was, have done the whole array of workouts pretty much over the years. I feel like anybody my age at this point has, growing up, it's just kind of like what you knew. I vaguely remember like my mom maybe working out some, like she worked out more as she was older. I don't remember as much when I was a kid, but I do remember like kind of the mentality of like dieting and watching what you eat and whatever. And then once I got older, and I was always active, growing up in sports and things. And then as I got older, like one of my friends taught aerobics in college, and so I went to that in our dorm, and then just continued to play volleyball in like a rec league where I grew up. We had a like small ski resort, so we skied, we water skied. So I didn't do a ton of like organized fitness. I would say probably till I was in my maybe early to mid 30s. And then
Mhm.
it was the, going to the gym and doing the like body jam and body pump and honestly most of the Les Mills workouts,
Yeah.
Zumba, things like that. Did that, did a wide variety of dieting, mostly using my fitness pal, putting in the information and tracking all my stuff, which I had a lot of, well, I guess at the time I thought I had a lot of success with, right?
Yes.
Because I lost weight. But
Right.
like now looking back, it was probably not healthy, and I was losing muscle. Like I had no muscle. I never lifted weights. I never did, any of those things. I was basically just doing cardio stuff. at one point I did lose, by doing all that, I did lose like 50 pounds. So it was a huge weight loss. And in my head, I was like, well, this thing, at the time, the whole time, my husband actually, when I got to that point, was like, you're almost like too skinny. Like he thought. In my head,
Yeah.
I was like, no, I'm not. I didn't really think that I was. And then gradually, it started coming back on, a few pounds here and there. And um, going into COVID, I think I was back up. Probably I had regained like 35 of those pounds. Um, I was doing Orange Theory at that time,
Hmm.
4 days a week. My, I'll be honest, my body was sore, which is not anything against Orange Theory, but my body was sore all the time. But I
It's
just was like,
very
this is what I
strenuous. That's what
need
I
to
hear. I've
do,
never done it, but yeah.
um, to, try and get, like, I just couldn't figure out. I felt like I was doing all the things, like I was working out. I was, like, do I enjoy treats? Do I enjoy indulgences? Yes. Was I eating like garbage 24/7? No. So it just became where I was like playing with a lot of things. And then the things that were working were super restrictive. Don't
Mm.
eat gluten, don't eat dairy, don't eat carbs, don't eat this, don't eat that. And it was like, this is so much work. And honestly, like, it sucks.
Right. It's not
So
very fun.
I was
Everything
like,
you're saying is just so familiar, to
yeah,
those of
it's
us.
not any fun to like go out for dinner and be like, okay, well, let's see, I can't have that. I can't have that. I can't have that. And so I'm like, there's got to be some way to accomplish what I want to accomplish, but still be able to enjoy, right? Like anything
Yes.
that tells me, no, you can't have that, just, I know myself well enough that it doesn't work for me long term. Can I commit to it for a little bit of time and not have it? Sure. But then I'm at some point going to reach like my breaking point, and I'm going to be that crazy person in the pantry with like the entire bag of Lay's potato chips, just shoveling the whole thing in my
Yeah.
mouth. Um, so I was kind of looking like for something like that. And then, the information is so, and I'm in the health and wellness space, and the information is so conflicting out there. Eat this, don't eat this. This is good for you. This is bad for you. It's like, I feel like, and I often say to clients and people that whatever you believe, if you look hard enough on the internet, you can find something to support your belief. Like
Absolutely.
if you believe carbs are bad for you will find 75 things that support that, and then you will find 75 things that say that that is not true.
Hmm.
So it's just, I feel like if I'm in this space, like, as you said, I teach Pilates. I also have my personal trainer certification and my health coach certification. So like I've done all these things and I still get overwhelmed and confused with it. So it's like, how does somebody who doesn't even have training in that space navigate it? So I was just really trying to figure out like what worked. I had started working. I determined, um, when I opened when we opened our studio in, well, the previous owner retired in August of 2020. And so my business partner and I took it over then in September of that year. And I tried continuing my schedule with Orange Theory, and I was like, this isn't working. Froze my membership, went back, reduced it down to just like, they have one that's like 8 times a month. So I
Hmm.
reduced it down to that. Still was like, this is, I'm paying, and it's not working into my schedule. So I quit going to Orange Theory, wasn't doing anything but like, working out, obviously getting Pilates workouts in. Um, and then started working with a personal trainer because I'm like, well, I want to do something. I want something that's geared towards me. And I know it sounds funny. I'm a personal trainer and I started working with a personal trainer, but I also work with another Pilates instructor because I don't, left to my own devices, I'm like, oh, I can
Yeah.
totally cheat on this,
We
or,
don't always coach ourselves as
no, I
well as
don't.
someone
And
else will.
we don't push ourselves, right? Like
Yeah.
for me on my own, I'll be like, oh, this is kind of heavy. I'm going to go lighter today. Or like, oh, yeah, 8 reps is good. I don't need to do 10. So I started working with a trainer and, building more muscle and whatever. But then I still struggled with kind of the nutrition piece.
Right.
And I think we finally figured out that through somebody, because I had for a long time tried to figure out how I ever stumbled upon you and your podcast to start with. And I think we finally figured out that connection through me
Yes.
following Marion, that
Yes.
as she had,
Yep.
like, I think shared something or posted something at one point in time. And I was like, oh, I'll check that out.
Yeah.
So after listening to several episodes of your podcast, I was like, okay, like, this is what I want. Like, these are the things that I want to be able to do, right? Like I want to be able to, I hate to say watch what I eat, but be mindful of what I'm
Hmm.
eating and fueling my body right, but still finding room for the things that I like. So, am I really going to sit down with a whole bag of Lay's and eat them? Theoretically, yes, I could, but I'm not going to. But I do want to be able to, like, if I'm having something and off the top of my head, I can't think of what, but sometimes there are just some things where I'm like, okay, I could go for something like salty with this, or some like a handful of chips or whatever. So I wanted to be able to figure out a way to navigate so that you could have, that I could have all of those things and not have to think of 17 rules about what I can do or can't do.
Yeah. I mean, everything you're saying, it's like almost you reach a breaking point where that light bulb moment goes off because you get to that moment where you're thinking, okay, this what I'm doing now isn't working, and I gain back some fluff, and I really need to dial it in, and then you start looking for what is out there, and yet so many things just have that hint of restriction, and your brain. I mean, I think I literally just got to a point with what you're saying here. It's like you can't go back to that. And then you
Right.
listen to the podcast, and that I think when you reached out, that's what you said. You're like, it just sounds really reasonable. And you almost seemed a little bit, and I might be reading into this, but you were a little bit unsure at first. You were like, it was kind of like, I'm gonna give this a try.
Mm-hmm.
And just you went all in right away, even though it was sort of your first time. uh, I'm like, it's okay. Let yourself have, I remember you said pizza was like when you filled out the form, like
It's like our it's like
I
our lazy night go to on like the end of
yeah.
the week. Yeah.
Yeah, Friday night, I want to have my pizza. And I'm like, you can have your pizza. And at first it was like a bit of a struggle for you to be like not not beat yourself up or just not almost have some negative thing like, oh, I'm eating healthy, but I'm also having the pizza. And I will say you got over that pretty quickly.
Well,
Like,
and I think like too for me, one of the bigger things to wrap my head around, and like you prepped me for this when we had our like discovery call or whatever, you're like, you need to just start getting comfortable with the idea that you're going to eat probably over 2,000 calories. And in my head, I'm like, holy crap,
yeah.
because let's be honest, when I was doing, when I lost all the weight before, I think my fitness pal had me eating like 16 or 1700 calories,
Oh my gosh.
right? So I was like
Yeah.
recording my workouts and so I'm using Orange Theory as an example. Again, it's nothing against them, and people have great results and love it. But I'm going there, and according to my watch or the heart rate monitor that they give you, I'm burning 500 calories, and then coming out. So you're working to come out with that net 1,600, and so I'm sure that I was obviously losing weight because I was essentially starving myself, right?
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, it was just, and it's probably why I was always sore. But
Yeah. Your
it was
body was
just it was
malnourished,
just
basically.
kind of like getting used to wrapping your head around like, okay. And I know that there are feelings on, you're like, okay, you're gonna weigh yourself every day, you're gonna use the Lose It app and you're gonna track your food. And I know that there are a lot of opinions and feelings on weighing yourself and
Hmm.
tracking.
Yep.
Um, and I think that, yeah, obviously for some people it is a thing and it triggers and it's an issue. For me, it's been more the accountability to making sure that I'm reaching, like as far as the tracking the food, it's been more the accountability of making sure that I'm reaching enough
Hmm.
food and protein and whatever for my body. So even like I said to you recently, because I took a couple of weeks off of tracking just to kind of see how it, goes, if I've gotten used to eating, which I have for the most part, but I did find that without that accountability of the tracking, I was probably not eating enough calories. Now, not drastically, I wasn't in that 1,600 phase, but I bet I was probably for maybe 500 less than I needed to be. And I probably wasn't hitting
Hmm.
my protein as much as I needed to. And I can tell it um, now, like I can tell a difference if I don't hit my protein goal and how I
Yeah.
feel. I'm hungry usually at bedtime, which I'm not normally.
Hmm.
If I am hitting it, and I just feel more tired and sluggish. So that was So the tracking has been good for me from that, the opposite end of, I think the first time I tracked, it was to deprive myself
Right, right, right.
and restrict. And
Yeah.
now I track to make sure that I'm reaching what I need as far as calories. So I think it's, the mindset, and the same thing with the weight. Like, I used to do it only once a week, which was one of the first things you said is don't do that.
Yeah.
Do it
Just
every
gonna mess
day.
with your head.
But I think that is helpful because the daily thing you see, like, some days you'll get on the scale and it's like 3 pounds more than the day before. And you're like, okay, what? Like, and now I think back and I'm like, okay, well, what did I eat? And I'm like, okay, yeah, I had like, something that was probably pretty salty. And
Hmm.
you get a better idea learning that like moving average thing. Like
It's so
for me,
helpful.
actually, I feel like developed a better relationship with weighing myself in the
Hmm.
scale. So,
Yeah, I mean that's the whole reason for it, and learning to interpret that information. And one thing I want to highlight that you just said was how you feel when you're not eating enough calories and not eating enough protein, because think of how many people every day say, "Oh, I don't have any energy, and I feel sluggish and I have brain fog and things like that." And yet they think the solution is slashing their calories and exercising like crazy and doing all these things that we think are healthy, when the reason you feel better is because you're actually nourishing your body when you're giving it what it needs. And I think that you have to experience it and see, sometimes you just don't know how bad you felt until you start feeling better. And I loved when you checked in and said, "Hey, this is how I've been feeling." And you immediately made the connection with, well, I haven't been tracking, so I think I just haven't been eating enough. And you didn't go to that place of, oh, I need to eat less, I need to slash my calories. You went to, I need to eat more of the right things.
mhm.
And that's really what it's all about. Now, we worked together. You signed up right before the holiday season. I remember you were just like,
I
whatever.
did.
Yeah, it
Yep,
was
it was
like,
like November of last
yeah.
year.
And you're like, I don't care. And that actually, I think it worked out great because you didn't have any pressure on you to go through Thanksgiving and Christmas. And I mean, you have a very busy social life. You're involved in lots of things. You are constantly saying, oh, I've got this dinner or event. And you are able to navigate that in maintenance. And so you really built your habits at a time when so many people are just in effort mode and think, oh, January 1st, that's when I'll actually start thinking about all this stuff. Can you talk about that experience of learning maintenance? And then, because you were in maintenance for quite a bit
Hmm.
until you felt ready for the fat loss phase. Because I talk about that a lot on here, but I think hearing it from your perspective would be really helpful, because a lot of women fear, like you said, eating more than 2,000 calories and not dieting right away when they're
Hmm.
putting effort into their nutrition. So could you just share what that was like for you, starting in maintenance and then knowing when you were ready for a fat loss phase?
Sure. So yeah, I started in maintenance. I started around the holidays. Honestly, like for me, it was a building up process because I probably wasn't eating. I mean, I think when we started, and I could be wrong, I don't remember exactly, but I think when we started, like my maintenance calories were like that 24, 2,500-ish range.
Yeah.
So it
Yep.
was kind of high.
It
I
felt it
mean,
felt high
for
to
me,
you. Yeah.
right? It felt high to me at the time. And it was like 160 grams of protein. And I was like, oh, for the love of God, how am I ever going to eat 160 grams of protein in a day?
Yeah,
So
because
for
I will
me, it
point
was
out
like
you were
work.
eating like 60, 80, maybe 100. So it felt like a big leap for
Yes.
sure.
Yes. And they're like, at first, I mean, and I've made that comment, there were days where I felt like I was just like randomly shoving protein in my face. Like, okay, that's got protein. Cool. Eat that. Okay, that's a
Yep.
good snack, whatever. So for me, it was really like, it wasn't, there was nothing restrictive about it. It was honestly the opposite experience. It was like, okay, like I need to work at getting used to eating this much, and this much protein and this many calories. And I will say though that I felt good like as I continued and added and increased those. like I felt good. I felt good in my lifts, in my workouts. I was able to like start increasing. I felt like more in my weights for some of my bigger lifts. And it's not like I'm setting out to be like a bodybuilder or anything, but obviously when you are doing a lifting program, you want to see some progressions. So I just really overall felt good. I didn't feel any pressure during the holiday season to like not have things or restrict what I was having at the holidays. So I thought it was good. And then we went on vacation in February, and that was probably the biggest. And we talked about it beforehand, and you were
Hmm.
like, just, you basically like do you. If you want to track and work out and all that stuff while you're on vacation, great. And if you don't, like, don't worry about it. And I didn't track while I was on vacation. I didn't actually do any type of formal workout. We were in Florida, so we walked, a decent amount and whatever, but we didn't track. And it was really nice to just go and not worry about it or really even like I gave it no thought. I didn't restrict what I ate. I didn't go completely off the rails on anything, but I mean, I had a couple of cocktails, I had desserts, I had, rich things that I probably wouldn't normally have, but I'm like, we're on vacation, so I'm going to enjoy things that I, normally wouldn't have at home. Um, and it was like great. And I made the comment to you, I think, after I got back that we were walking the one night to dinner and you were familiar with the place where we went. And so the people were on the path and like the gal was talking about, the plus side of like the walk from the resort to
Oh,
those
right.
restaurants was
Yeah.
that she was like burning off her food or, making it so that it was okay that she ate. And I was like, in my head, just like, that is such a messed up mindset. But I mean, I've had that mindset. I've probably made
Yeah.
those comments before. So that for me, like the vacation part of it was really like, oh my gosh. And I got home from vacation and really like my weight had changed maybe a few pounds, but I'm sure it was just, water weight. And within after being back for a few days and a week and getting back into my normal routine, it was back to where it was. So I stayed in maintenance until we started in November. I stayed in maintenance until, well, I stayed in maintenance till April. I
Yeah.
started fat loss the beginning of April, and then I got sick and
Right.
came out of
Yeah.
fat loss within like
Yep.
4 days. And then I don't think I restarted it again until May, if I remember right. I think kept me out of it until I was
Yeah.
better and then gave me a couple weeks after being sick um, back in maintenance before. So I think we dove back into it in May and then stuck with that until August because we were going on a quick vacation to my brother's the beginning of August. So I stayed in weight and fat loss until then, and then I went back into maintenance, which is where I am now, but getting ready to go back into fat loss probably here sometime in early October.
Yeah. I
Just
mean, you're
going into the
you're
holiday
you're
season.
literally living, what I talk about here on the podcast all the time. You're a living, breathing example of it. And I have to laugh because every time I've had a client start a fat loss phase, they have gotten sick. There's been a family emergency, and we're going, what is the universe trying to tell us? This is not the right time for a fat loss phase. And the beauty of that is you just go back into maintenance and oh, this is fine. I'm still taking care of myself. It's no big deal. And fat loss is going to be available to me when I'm ready. And when you were ready, you were just so ready. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, there were some ebbs and flows because you chose to do it over the summer. But overall, it was really exciting to watch your check-ins each week because you'd be watching that moving average on the scale go down and you knew it was fat. You knew it
Mm-hmm.
was not muscle this time because to be more clear, your personal trainer is very much, you're lifting
Mm-hmm.
big weights doing
Yes.
deadlifts.
Yes.
And I think you still had a personal record, right? Or you
I
went
did.
up even
I went up
during your fat
in a
loss
couple of
phase in your lifting, which is exciting. So can you talk specifically about what that fat loss phase experience was like for you? Because you did at the beginning of this call, we kind of talked about it. And Angela says to me, I don't even know how much weight I lost. And I said, well, I do
Right.
because I have it recorded. But I think that is so great because every time we see before and after photos, well, it's always like so and so lost 11.5 pounds in 6 weeks and in all this stuff. And for you, it wasn't about that. So
Right.
I would just love to hear, you tell us what that experience was like for you.
Sure. So yeah, I started it, came out of it, went back into it. When I did go back into it, I will say the first couple weeks of it were adjustment. Not that because we didn't drastically. I mean, in my head, I was like, fat loss phase. Okay, we're dropping like, 800 calories or something. And it wasn't. It was like maybe 300 or something. Like
Yeah,
it
it was
wasn't a
between 300 and 400 at
ridiculous,
different
like it
times.
wasn't
Yeah.
a crazy amount of, yeah, because we started with one and then once we got that, then we dropped it another 100. So really like that was just kind of figuring out, not really necessarily how to, honestly, my biggest thing was because we increased my protein initially,
Hmm.
and it was trying to figure out how to get less calories and more protein was
Yep.
my first issue. And then that was kind of stressing me out a little bit. So then we backed my protein off again. And it was
Yep.
kind of funny because there were several times I feel like after we backed my protein off that I still hit the original protein number,
Yep.
but it was like just the fact that I didn't have to hit that number.
Less pressure.
Right.
Just makes it
Didn't
easier.
stress me out. And part of it I'm sure is just because you start to better figure out how to like mix and match what you're eating, um, to kind of, fine tune that formula of like, okay, this will keep me at my calories, but yet still hit my other goals. Um, so that was probably like my biggest thing. I am not a huge drinker to start with. Like I'll maybe have a drink a week. Um,
Hmm.
like normally going into fat loss, I was like, nope, I'm just not like I don't drink that much to start with, so it's not that
Easy
hard to get rid
goodbye to
of.
those
And
calories. Yep.
yeah, I don't want to waste. I would rather use the calories on like ice cream or a hot fudge sundae or something or
Same.
a cookie than a
Same
drink.
here.
So when I was in fat loss, I was like, okay, so I didn't drink while I was in fat loss. I dove into the world of mocktails. And so that was probably the biggest thing. But then like also, yeah, the comment I made about I truly I have no idea really what my actual total weight loss was. I was more probably focused on um like how I felt. The changes that I noticed were more like, oh, okay, like, maybe I mean, I like did waist measurements. So I knew that like my waist had gone down a little bit. But it
Yep.
was really more just like, which kind of sounds horrible to say, but the things I noticed were more appearance based, just in that,
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, well, like I have more definition in my arms and I like my hips look like they, are a little bit smaller or things like that. And in my head, I was like, I really don't feel like I've lost a ton of weight, a couple of pounds or what, a few pounds. So, that was probably it. Or like I was able to still do like the weights or increase weights a little bit. So those were kind of the more like measuring tools that I used. I actually had a weird experience in that I ordered a couple of things from Eddie Bauer, a
Hmm.
couple some bottoms and a couple tops before we went to Colorado in August, and I had to send three of the tops back because they were too small.
Hmm.
And it was like, why, like, people would be like, why are you excited about that? I'm like, because they weren't too small because I've gained weight. I'm like, they're too small because my like biceps and shoulders have gotten stronger. And
Yep.
that's where it was too tight. And I was like, that's kind of cool. I've never had to send clothes back before because like I'm too muscular to wear them. It's because like, they didn't fit otherwise. So that was kind of fun.
Well, and when you're saying it's the visualization because you've built muscle and that's more dense, and then through the fat loss phase, you've eliminated that layer of fat. So you have the muscle definition. Whereas when you were trying to eat those 1,600 calories a day and the scale was going down and you felt like you were being successful with your diet, you were losing muscle. And so people think they want weight loss, but what they really want is that muscle definition. You can't get the definition unless you nourish your body enough to build the muscle.
Yeah.
So I totally hear you because same thing with shirts now on my biceps. is they're tight on the top, and I really have to try things on now before I buy them for that same reason. And yet I'm like, but I think they look better. So it is a mindset thing to start to make that shift to figure out what exactly are the positive changes that I want to see because we're so, almost brainwashed to think that the scale is the only thing that,
Right.
is telling us if we're doing well or not. So yours, when you started versus when you ended the fat loss phase, it was about 9.5 pound difference. But then we went back into maintenance just a few weeks ago. It wasn't that so well, a
Yeah,
month
in
ago.
August. Yeah.
Yeah. And I know a lot of people freak out, but the scale does go back up. But now you've been very clearly in maintenance,
Hmm.
even though I think it went up about 3 pounds from what your lowest was. But you know that it's just you're back to eating those extra 400, 300 calories per day of
Hmm.
food, and you're drinking more water, and your muscles are holding on to, you're eating more carbs and stuff. So you never freaked out. You were like, okay, this is what my new maintenance is. And here we are. No big deal.
Yeah. And I
Um,
feel it. I mean, like I feel it now. Like I had the kind of like thought. So, that headspace doesn't totally leave where I had the thought the other day, like looking, I caught like a side angle of myself sitting actually at the dining room table because the way our house is, like there's windows. So if you're sitting at where I was sitting, I could like see my reflection in the window
mhm.
from the side. And I was like, oh, I look like fluffy. So it was just kind of like that. So there's still a little bit of that like mind thing, but
Yeah.
then I was like, okay, but I probably am, like
Hmm.
realistically I probably am a little bit more than I was 6 weeks ago because I've gone back into maintenance, and that's kind of part of it, I guess. So
Yeah, I mean, you're
you
going
know
to be holding on to more water, you're eating more carbs. And when you're in the fat loss phase, you're in that restrictive space that very normal when you go back to see the scale go up, feel a little bit more full in fullness because that's really just the water weight, the food, etc. And you're looking to feel ready for another fat loss phase because we
hmm
didn't this is something else we talk about on here, but when we decided to end the fat loss phase, you were done. You were like,
right.
you rocked it, you did it for about 3 months, 2.5, three
Hmm.
months, and you were like, I can't do this anymore. And instead of being like, oh no, I didn't hit my goal or whatever, now you know, okay, I'm going to go
Hmm.
back into maintenance and then we'll be able to do a fat loss phase again. And this time you've moved, I mean, so you were checking in weekly and now you've moved
Hmm.
to checking in on the first of the month and 15th of the month. And you really know what to do. When you do your check-ins, you're very much problem solving. You'll have some specific questions, but really this whole process has empowered you. And the whole point is you're going to get to a point where you're going to figure it out for yourself. And you actually, I mean, you actually decided to go and get the certification to become a nutrition coach because,
Right.
you were just like, I love this and you want to share this with more people as well. But your own experience, you're going to be able to share that with people and just show them, you got to have the patience, but this does work. And
Right.
what would you say? You've talked about a little bit, but what do you feel was the biggest difference for you from the way you've done things in the past to the like what you see for down the road for yourself, for the next 6 months, year, 10 years, or whatever? What do you feel like that difference is compared to how you used to do things as far as, cutting calories and constantly being on that
Hmm.
hamster wheel?
I think part of it is um just the education piece of it, because
Hmm.
you are really good about like managing expectations. And I mean, I think like you flat out kind of have made the comment, I don't know if it was to me directly or just in your podcast, like if you're looking for quick and easy, like I'm not your person.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and so it's like getting into that mindset of like, comfortable with the fact that, okay, this isn't going to be where I'm going to be like, oh my gosh, it's a month later and I've lost like 15 pounds, like knowing that it's a, and I hate that it's a marathon, not a sprint, but it's it's a slow process, and being realistic with that. But I feel like approaching it that way and learning like how to make those adjustments and those changes is what is going to make it long-term successful for me. Even the tracking and the weighing and whatever, like, will I always track on a daily basis? No, I
Hmm.
probably not.
Right.
um
That doesn't sound
it's
fun.
kind of
You've
a
been
lot,
doing that
but
forever.
I do know, like, I was self-aware enough the last couple of weeks to like
Yep.
catch the signs and know that, like, okay, yep, I need to go back into like tracking daily here for just a little bit, just to kind of get myself back and see like what I'm where I'm, missing or whatever. So I think that's just the difference is has been just the whole process, and the fact that it's not restrictive. At no point, I've done this for almost a year now, so what, 10 months? At no point in the last 10 months have I felt deprived
Hmm.
of
That
anything.
that's amazing. Yeah, even your fat
So,
loss phase, you made some changes. I'd say probably your lunches is where you really dialed it in, but your
mhm.
dinners, your Friday nights, you still had pizza in there, you still had pasta, and you're still hitting your protein goal, and it worked.
Mhm.
It almost sometimes it feels a little weird. You're like, isn't this supposed to be more miserable than it is? But
Yeah.
sometimes just knowing that you can have that piece of candy or something, it's so mentally rewarding to not
Right.
have the guilt associated with it, or all that chaos that can come when you are restricting. And also because you're not restricting, you didn't end up in that place where you're eating the entire bag of potato chips, because with restriction comes binging, and you
Right.
never ended up there. um what would be your one piece of advice for our listeners, if they're deciding to count macros, start looking, if they go to my macro calculator and they see those numbers, what do you, right? Don't freak out if it's over
Yeah, don't
2,000.
panic.
Yeah. But
Don't
what
panic.
what would you say would be a pivotal piece that helped you? Is there people are always asking, like, what are the food items? What should I eat? Um, is there, what is something that you enjoyed for your lunches? Um, because you're
Uh-oh.
really good at ordering out and
Very good at
making
ordering
some
out at
good
lunch.
choices. Yeah.
We are, yeah, just because of our my lunch situation sometimes is a little bit weird, and where I'm not always great at like planning on bringing things for lunch with me when I'm at our office. So we are expert Chick-fil-A lunch people. So that's probably like one of my main go-tos for lunch is just grilled chicken sandwich, and I order the fruit cup instead of fries, and I buy individual cottage cheese
Cottage
packages that I
cheese.
keep here at the
Yes,
office.
you are the queen of
And
cottage cheese. It would be, I look at
I
the
always kind of
day
have
and
been.
then there's like this random cottage cheese with dinner or lunch or
Yep,
something.
great. If I need to throw in protein, I'm like, okay, I can have cottage cheese with my dinner. And it's funny because I'm the only one in the house that eats it. So my husband thinks it's disgusting. But so that is, yeah, a go-to. I This is gonna sound funny because it's in my thing almost on a daily basis. I, prior to this, and still honestly hate Greek yogurt.
Yeah.
Like, I just think Greek yogurt on its own tastes disgusting. But
Tastes like baby throw up to me.
yeah, but you were like, oh, here's this Greek yogurt. This is what I do, and it's got good protein, blah blah blah. And I'm like, okay, so I just had to figure out how to make it so that I could like it. And
Yeah.
oddly, it's one of my favorite things to have now. So like, I initially started off just getting the plain or the vanilla, one of the two, or sometimes I have to get whatever the store has, but and just adding some protein powder to it, a little bit
Hmm.
of like chocolate protein powder, mixing it up, some berries. You had recommended the all brand buds, and then just like if I needed a little sweetness, there might be just a tiny drizzle of honey on it. or I would sometimes sprinkle some mini chocolate chips on it just to make it so like there are nights where Doug's a huge ice cream person. I'm more of a like ice cream person. It's one of those things I have to be craving to have
Hmm.
where he could eat it every single night. So my ice cream, like I have Greek yogurt often for dessert
Yeah,
in the
and then
evening when he has
you're
ice
getting
cream.
that protein and yeah,
Yeah,
making it taste good. For me, it's those Oikos Pro.
yeah,
Don't have that baby barf tinge tinge to it. I don't know if I'm a little sensitive to it from working, in the baby nursery for all those years.
yeah.
But yeah, and it's like I will I will say you would just experiment and you would be like,
Hmm.
let me try this. Let me try this type of protein. Let me try this type of yogurt. Let me try this topping. And so often when we're given meal plans and you're just handed something, like how many times, I mean, haven't you been told, buy the plain zero fat Greek yogurt and just put raspberries in it? I'm
Yeah,
sorry, I wouldn't find that something I would want to eat every day. But because were not afraid to experiment, you found something you did like that also checked the boxes on your protein, your fiber, and all that stuff. So that
yeah.
that is awesome advice. So grilled chicken sandwich and the fruit cup.
And the
That's,
pickup
I feel
and the
like
cottage cheese.
was it like every Wednesday or something? I would sneak it
Usually
into.
every Monday or Wednesday, one of the
Yeah.
days that I'm in the office for the whole day, usually is that. Yeah. And then the other day is like, okay, now what are we going to do? Because I don't actually want Chick-fil-A twice
Yeah.
in the week. But sometimes we have stuff left over. With just the two of us at home, we don't always have a ton of leftover because we try to, figure out how to make stuff so that it's not a ton. Um,
Yeah, we're slightly in that now that we're minus one teenage boy. But
teenage boys
we
make a
still
big
have
difference.
one. One can make a big difference. So I'm still trying to figure out my shopping each week,
Hmm.
trying to figure out what do I get, what do I not get. But
Yeah.
yeah, this was really helpful, and I hope that people really take away that message of, you just have to have the patience, and it doesn't have to be miserable because you've really enjoyed the process. You never
Yeah.
complain. Even you went through, you've had some hard times because it's been 10 months and that's life. And you always understood, maintenance was there for you and you can still eat those foods you enjoy, those foods that comfort you, and you can still get results. So I'm just
Yeah.
so glad.
And that's probably one of the like biggest things is that it's like it's not monotonous. So yes, there are like a lot of repetitive things that I
Hmm.
eat because I know that they hit certain calorie or, protein goals or whatever. So I have a lot of repetition in what I eat, but it's never, but I also know that I have options to change it up. So it's not like I'm eating a grilled chicken breast and steamed broccoli 17 times a week,
Yeah,
which I have done
boring.
something before where you ate chicken and broccoli like every meal for like 3 days or some crazy thing. But so it's not that, even though you do have a lot of repetition, I was never bored or I never felt restricted. And I think that's the biggest thing for me personally is that I need to not feel restricted in what I'm doing. Otherwise, I don't think it would work long term.
Yeah, I think there are some people out there who can do that. And I've seen, those reels on Instagram where someone says, the 5 meals I ate for whatever,
Mm-hmm.
6 months to lose however many pounds or something. And they'll say, this is the only thing I ate. And I just think to myself, I don't care. Even if I was eating my favorite food every day, it wouldn't be my favorite food after
Right.
maybe a week of it. So I think that is really important because it's all about that flexibility equals sustainability. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited. I can't see wait to see where we are after your next fat loss phase. I don't think you'll have a whole lot you want to do after that. I mean, you're in great shape and you're just going to define those muscles even more. So,
Yeah.
um yeah, thank you so much for
Sure.
spending this time and sharing your story with everyone and yeah, have a great rest of your day.
Thanks. You too.
Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode of the Feel Your Best Formula podcast. If you enjoyed the information and discussion we had here today, then make sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. If you're serious about making changes with your nutrition and fitness, then you definitely want to join my weekly newsletter list as well. You can find the link below and more information in the episode details. That's all for today, and we will see you back here next week for a new episode of the Feel Your Best Formula podcast.